Hello and welcome to his Climate Change or Concern podcast, where we aspire to turn climate concern into action. In a world grappling with the urgent need for climate action, businesses often find themselves at a crossroads. Is sustainability truly compatible with profitability? Or are they forced to choose between environmental responsibility and economic success? In this episode, we challenge the prevailing narrative and explore how businesses can not only survive but thrive by embracing sustainability. We are joined by Tanya Singhal, a trailblazer in the field of sustainable business. With a wealth of experience leading solar and Minzo Carbon in the dynamic Indian market, she was recognized as the Business World Sustainability Business Person of the Year 2023. Tanya will share her insights on overcoming challenges, seizing opportunities, and building profitable ventures for a sustainable future. Thank you so much, Tanya, for giving your time to us today.
Thank you, and so happy to be here.
Tanya, can we begin this discussion by first understanding the most well known myth about sustainability, that it is not profitable? If that is not the case, then uh, would you please tell if sustainability and profitability can work in a symbiotic way?
Sure, you've started with a bang, Anirudh, I must say. So, everybody around thinks like sustainability is something that is just a good to do thing, which I might need to do. But if I do it, oh, I'll incur too much cost, or it'll not have the right return for me. And that, exactly like you said, is one of the biggest myth. Sustainability is not something that you can look at as just a small, immediate effort thing. It is something that you have to see for a long horizon, and that's how you have to evaluate it. In schools and college, we were taught this term called ROI, return on investment. Sustainability actually stands at the forefront of understanding what ROI is. The logic here is that you do small, subtle actions now or investments now in the present. The benefit of that you get as time to come. Now, if I will stop and I will look at something like saying, okay, I'm seeing this immediately, is this giving me return? The answer is, when you put money in equity in a stock market, even that doesn't give you return in the first day. You have to stay invested. The same is true about sustainability. You have to invest, let its results come, and then see the outcome. I can maybe give you an example of this through solar, something that I've done all my life. So, a typical solar plant, almost 90 to 95% of the cost comes upfront as capex. Now, somebody on the outside can say, oh my God, I have invested this 3.5 crores a megawatt. It is so costly. I've put in so much money. But now look at the same plant on a 25-year horizon, which is the life of the plant. You do an upfront investment, and then your O&M cost is minimal. It's like 3-4%. And the sun, which is everly shining, is a free source of fuel. Effectively, you end up saving your electricity each year, or what you would have drawn from the grid, and you end up making north of 15-16% returns. So if I would have just stopped on the day zero and said that, oh, this is super expensive, then I wouldn't have ever invested in it. But if you look at the long horizon of things, is when you see the real impact. So, whoever says sustainability is not profitable or just cost is not looking at the full picture. If you've just zoomed in into a very small element, and into that zoom in element you're making all decisions. And unfortunately, life is not a zoom in; it is a zoom out, looking at a macro picture, and that macro is what makes difference. I don't know, and if is sharing possible. I put a small graph that I would like to show the audience at some point of time of how a solar plant looks like in terms of cash flows, and we can take it up at the right amount of time.
Maybe we can do that later because I'll maybe have to deal with the I was not prepared for it, so I'll
Yeah, I just thought about it in the
yeah.
last moment. So whenever, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Tanya, in the same vein, if we zoom out a bit more, so for example, saying that sustainability is profitable in green businesses, in green products, could be something that might be easy. But what about some of the products that are inherently not green? Because there are certain products that push for overconsumption.
Yeah.
There are certain products which are very resource intensive. What about that?
Yeah, sure. Let's take this very simply from the maximum consumer goods you see. And I happen to sit with some of these great companies like HUL, Marico, and I understood what they are doing live on the ground. They can very well say that, oh, I am just producing for consumption. Why do I need to care about sustainability? I have a CSR fund that I'm looking at. That's all I need to deploy on. But that's not what they're doing right now. They're deploying multiple different concepts of circular economy and farming, in a sense that not just is there raw material production sustainable, but it is also cheaper for them, and they're saving like 30 to 40% of their raw material cost by doing it. And the techniques vary. The techniques can be regenerative farming, it can be crop rotation, it can be saying that you do agroforestry, like different crops at the same place, or it can be something as basic as recycling, reusing. The simplest concept is that the 3 R's, which is recycle, reduce, and reuse, all effectively mean use less, which is savings. So it's not just about a green business that, oh, you're doing solar, that is why you can be sustainable. This is valid across businesses. I took an example of consumer goods. Let me take a very different example of real estate. Let's think about green buildings. Everybody thinks, oh, green building, what will I have to do? If you go back to, very old times, go back to the forts that have been built in Rajasthan, the mahals, those were green. They were built with naturally air cooled solutions because it used to be so hot. At that time, there was no air conditions, right? So despite the heat of a place like Jaisalmer, Rodepur, they were built in a way that natural air cooling will come, natural light will come, and the place will run without using any electricity. We've kind of forgotten those concepts of design in our life now. This very famous architect Gaudi, if you happen to be in Barcelona, you see his Gaudi Casablanca, this thing. Oh my God, what a piece of sustainable architecture it shows. It shows how natural contours, how natural lighting, how using the airflow around you, you can minimize electricity usage by as much as 50%. And all of these concepts are available with us. The difference is you can't apply these concepts as a afterthought. You have to think about it at the foundation level when the design of the building is happening or when the actual concept is happening. And that's where people miss it. Okay, let's assume somebody did not do that part and remaining at buildings. Think about something as basic as saying, oh, why don't I change all my normal bulbs with the LED bulb? Again, you will come with the same concept. LED bulb is more expensive, but don't look at that immediate cost and time. A typical LED bulb can break even in as less as 2 months if you even use that bulb for 4 to 5 hours a day. So you have to look at those stats in consolidation. We talked about consumer goods. We talked about buildings. Let's talk about something as simple as the water we drink. The Bisleri bottles or any PET bottles that come. You'll be amazed to know in India, almost 95% of that plastic gets recycled. So there is a whole recycling economy sitting out there, and a lot of effort is going on. There are obviously two core incentives of recycling. One is that you are sustainable, but the other bigger incentive which drives the business is when you recycle, you get that raw material back and you're saving money. So it's profitable. So you have to look at all of these things in perspective, and I can keep going on from industry to industry to industry, and you will see the same trend there. You'll be surprised to hear that in Google, in the last 5 years, one of the search word that has had a 71% surge in its volume is sustainable products. So it's not just people sitting in the green industry, it's everybody, employees, customers, investors, all looking at this concept and saying, as an ecosystem, what are you doing?
I think this compelling answer that you've just given makes me rethink about the next question that I had framed, because I think the way you're putting it is basically it's not even an additional cost, it's just about thinking differently.
It's an investment. So let me say you have a child. Do you say when you are thinking about a child, oh, I have to go to the hospital, I have to pay a bill, oh, I have to invest in his education, do I do that? You don't, right? Because you are investing in something that you don't even imagine what results and brief it will give, the happiness it brings to you. So it's completely non-monetarily, right? Switch this to an business that you are building. There everything changes because the emotional element is out, right? So it's exactly that same element that you have to think about and say, okay, the benefits and the results will reap in, but it's almost like raising a child. You have to invest at different points, and the results keep coming back unexpectedly. The hug the child comes and gives you, you never asked for it. Similarly, the results that the business gives you, you never asked for it. So it's exactly that parallel.
I'll skip my question on initial cost because I think you very compellingly answered it.
I'll answer the question on initial cost, and I'll answer it with solar. One of the easiest industry. And today the government of India is giving a large subsidy for people to install rooftop solar. And the simple logic is that even if you invest 100% of the capex yourself, it will take you about 7 years to kind of break even. And then the power that you get for the next 23, 24 years, because the life is anywhere from 25 to 30 years, is free and it's all yours, right? So even then, it is an economic solution. But despite that, there are people who are hesitant to say, should I make that investment? Should I do that cost? And which is where there are small subsidies coming in terms of the cost proportion. So yes, there is anxiety and there is nervousness, but that's nervousness is because people have not seen the full picture.
We have a bright outlay of things that work. Now, what if I have to ask you that how should we integrate this knowledge and strategies into the business operations? Would you have some recommendations that how we can integrate this thinking, this process? Are there some quick fixes? Are there some strategies with which we can put this in our core business operations?
It's a great question, and I'm glad that you're asking it, because somehow there is this again a big misnomer that sustainability is something that I have to look once a year when I'm filing a report, or when I'm doing my ESG reporting or BRSR reporting or CBAM reporting. And that's absolutely incorrect. You have to think about sustainability as something you do in your daily operations. It's almost like the CXOs and CEOs have to start at the forefront to say, this is the ethos of my organization. I want you to think about this first in everything you do, in any upstream supply that you're thinking about or any downstream supply that you're thinking about. Because what people don't realize is, emissions are split as three: scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, right? Scope 1 is something that you directly do. Scope 2 is electricity footprint that your organization directly consumes. And scope 3 is everything else. It's like what my suppliers are doing on my upstream, and when my product goes to the market, what it does on the downstream, what my employees are generating, what I'm doing in terms of any other thing that I've not seen. And that scope 3 is somewhere about 90 to 95% for businesses, and that is not something that you can think as an afterthought. That has to get integrated in every aspect you do. Something as simple as, oh, how do I source, where does this come from, is my raw material traveling long distances, by what means of transport? Those are decisions you have to take on a daily basis, and instill that in not just your team but also your suppliers. Similarly, my raw material, how does it reach the consumer? What path it travels, what mode it takes? Do I have a hub and spoke model that kind of takes these things together? All of these things are things you have to think about daily. Now, how do you do that? Simple logic is incentivization. There are stats that now compensation for C-suite has started to get linked to their ESG metrics, and that's how it gets trickled down. Because we as human beings, when we feel that, oh, we are getting compensated for this, we just automatically start acting well. The second thing that I feel that works in organization is challenges. When you see the person next to me is doing it, you're like, oh, I also want to do it. Because we are by default people who follow in a herd. So set examples, put champions, and get their success story out. A lot of the time, it's just about celebrating those small wins. To say, this guy has done it, why can't I do it? And it didn't take me that much effort. And the third is driving it top down. So you're incentivized, you are celebrated, and then you're driven top down to say, "Oh, not just me, my CEO believes in it, my CXO believes in it, my board defines it. I have to then think about it." I've seen a combination of these three work. Having said that, the pull is all dimensional. The pull is from employees, the pull is from investors, and the pull is from customers. So the pull is multidimensional. Now it's how about you integrate that pull into different ethos in your organization.
I had this question coming later, but I think the way you've explained it, I might want to ask it now. Because now that you've built two companies that are related with sustainability and have been able to push for mitigating climate change effects in some way or the other, can you talk about some of your experiences of integrating these initiatives, these metrics into some of your companies? Maybe that would be a more compelling example, and you can share a story with us if you like so. Yeah.
Sure. I'll do it in both elements. Let me first talk about Minzo.
Yeah.
Minzo stands for My Net Zero. As we were trying to build the element of saying how do we get people to net zero, we were raised with this question that why don't we just simply help them reduce whatever they can in their carbon footprint, and whatever they can't, give them carbon credits for the same. Right? But as they do that, it's not something which we have built in as a sustainable thing in the business. It's somebody else who has done a good job. So we thought about this concept of what's happening today in terms of green credits, right? There's a lot of greenwashing because you don't know if somebody is saying, oh, these credits are coming from a plant or a forestation. Has that genuinely happened or not? And if it has happened, every year, multiple crores of CSR funding goes into tree plantation. But what you don't know is, did that trees actually last the next year? Because this next year, the same amount of money is given to the same set of agents who go back and plant at the same place. And the fun fact is that a sapling doesn't absorb CO2. It takes it about 3 years to 4 years before it actually starts to even sequester. So all of those problems came in front of us. So we think about how can we make this an integrated part of our own business. So we thought about a circular economy concept. The problems we had was there is no longevity of tree plantation, and there is no emotional connect with the donor because he doesn't know what happened to my donation. So we started this route where somebody gives the money, the investor. The money goes to a farmer who owns the land. And his incentive is that the investor gives him free samplings, manure, and everything he needs. But all produce that the farmer does is his. Now, the farmer has an economic incentive. He wants to tend the plant because he knows if he does well, he'll get 100% of the produce for himself and the raw material is free. Now, in return, the KPI, or the request he has is twofold. One, the carbon that is sequestered, which he anyways was not using, gets assigned to the investor. And two, he has to click a picture every month and upload it on our platform so the investor can see it. So what has happened in the system? Money was going before. Trees were getting planted before. But there was no incentivization inside it to create a circular concept. What we have done now is we've created a loop where the investor gets what he wants, the farmer gets what he wants, and the loop keeps running and it doesn't break. And that's one simple loop. You can create multiple loops like this in any business. At Solar Arise, things were very different. Solar Arise was all about building large scale solar plants. There it was more around how do you source the best. Your equipment, when it comes from China, it comes through seaports. How do you see, do you actually need it to travel that much? or can you buy locally? And today we are fortunate that the Indian manufacturing industry on the solar part has grown so well, and specifically on the part of large equipment like inverters, transformers, that you don't need to import at all. Again, one misnomer that sometimes people think as they're building businesses is that if I'm building a business in sustainability, it's okay if there is no ROI or no this thing in the business model. But that's wrong, because you can invest 100 rupees, 1000 rupees, maybe a lakh rupees on something that doesn't make money, but you will never invest millions and billions on dollars. So as any entrepreneur or climate entrepreneurs, as we say, is listening to this, when you're thinking about a green problem or sustainable problem, always first think that how will this self run, how will this make money, and then accordingly build the model around it. Because the fact is, there is possibility to make it profitable, but you have to find the right edge and the right solution. Solar is one of the biggest example like this. When it was 18 rupees, 17 rupees, how you were installing 5, 10 megawatts. The scale was very small. Now it is 2.5 rupees. It's way cheaper than coal. And you're already talking about this year where installations were more than coal, and you're already being 50% of the installed base in India. And you're trying to become almost 500 gigawatts by 2030. All of that would have not been possible if it was not economical.
Your example of loops remind me that a similar endeavor is being undertaken with solar, where people are being asked to purchase their solar panel because if they cannot, in cities like Mumbai where it's tough for you to install solar panels on your roof, you can purchase a solar panel somewhere afar, have it assigned to you, and then reduce the bill accordingly and however you want to do it.
Yeah.
So I think this idea of creating loops is something, I think, and it also, I think, makes you environmentally conscious as well, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's not about a decision, it's about a lifestyle, and it makes you believe that I'm investing something in my net zero, I better make good choices because otherwise there's some more money to pay for that.
See, sometimes what happens is we discount small choices, right? We don't think the power of what these small steps can mean. You don't have to completely alter your life, like, oh, I'll stop using the air conditioner, or I have to stop completely traveling, I'll never fly. Because that is just not physically possible. But a lot of other things is possible. In our organization, we created these small movements of, as we call challenges, to say, one day challenge. Today I'll wear an old cloth that I've not used for a long time. Today I'll wear an unpressed shirt. Today I'll wear my father's shirt. Making things emotional and creating a challenge in it. One day meatless. One day through a green cap. One day through sharing. One small things. And you see the ripple impact and the cumulative sum when you multiply it with a billion is huge. You don't realize when you're taking a car from Noida to Gurgaon, the amount of emissions you do is almost equivalent to chopping off a tree's worth CO2 absorbed in a year. You put that into perspective for somebody, he'll say, मुझे जाना है क्या? Do I genuinely need it, or can I do a Zoom meeting or a video call? And that perspective is needed. Obviously, when it's not avoidable, you'll have to go. But even that one of two of that you cut makes a difference.
Now, putting all of these perspectives, insights, to-do items into actionable items as to climate entrepreneurs or anyone who's listening and wants to work in this field, increase sustainability in whatever they are working, would you share some of your insights where new entrepreneurs who are entering, what should they look at? What are the market trends? Maybe this could act as a primer for them, as a good starting point on areas they could work on?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Again, very good question. And I'll also start here with first misnomer, right? Which is something I alluded a little bit in the start. For anybody thinking about building a business in sustainability, please be sure that the business model is in a sense that it generates returns. Because just thinking that I'm doing good but not generating returns will never scale your business. You'll be able to do a little bit through grants and all, and that's great to do if you're an NGO. But if you're building a proper hardcore business, it has to self-sustain. And the fun fact is, it doesn't take too many tweaks to get to sustenance. You just have to think differently, right? The second thing I will say is somehow the gestation period or the amount of time you spend to build these businesses is relatively a bit longer than saying, oh, I'll just build the next app or a fund or something like that. So be ready for the long run. Don't come in by saying, oh, I want to build this and I want a return or an exit in 2 years or 3 years. Because if you're thinking that, you've already lost the game. Be ready to invest at least 5 to 7 years, because the first 2 to 3 years is just going to be base building for you. And then you will build on top of that. So if you think that your time horizon is not there, please don't enter this space, because this space needs that amount of baking in to be able to reap any returns. The third thing I would say is zoom out. Sustainability is about zooming out. You may take one element of it, but then see where that one element can get applied across industries. Because while it's very important to have a product which is a niche, the application should be across the board, because then you build something once but you can sell it across a different this thing. Because as a concept, it's not like the needs of businesses change, right? Sustainability in the same way can be applied everywhere. Say energy, right? Renewable. We started doing it as something which replaces the grid, but now you're seeing it across the board. You're seeing a direct consumption. You're seeing it as use cases of saying, oh, I'll build green hydrogen from this, so I have another fuel which uses it. I will run not just my things, I will run the metro and everything else. So look at large use cases by zooming out while building a niche. And the last thing I will say is, don't just enter into it because it's the hot word of today. Enter into it because it's something that you enjoy, and it's also something that when you do well will give you a good night's sleep. And sometimes people think of this whole entrepreneurship as this whole sexy thing that I want to do right now, but what you don't realize is in the process there are sometimes way many lows that you have to go through, and to sustain those lows you have to have a deep sense of passion or love to what you're doing, to come back and spring back the next day and get ready to jump and run and to say, yeah, I want to do this. So build that conviction before you just jump in, else you will just lose the few years and be set back with disappointment. And those are the 3 or 4 things that I will definitely advise the people who are looking to enter the space.
And are there any industries that you're particularly excited about? Like industries that are expected to grow, industries that are generating a lot of traction?
Well, the list is wide. I see a lot of work happening today in storage end when I look at renewable as a sector, because storage sits at the forefront of both renewables and EV. Right, so there is a lot of work happening there in terms of batteries and this thing. There's a lot of AI and software work which combines these industry trends to say that how do you actually use AI to become more sustainable or track emissions or help people get to the right solutions. There is this whole sector of circular economy. How do you help people reduce, reuse, find within their businesses what to do? There is a lot of work on reporting. So the streams are very wide. You can choose from waste management, water management, renewable energy, circular economy. SDGs are wide open.
I'm reminded that if we want our economy to be net zero by 2070, this means readjusting it.
Yes.
And if we are readjusting it, this means that there'll be some tectonic shifts happening everywhere.
Yeah.
So
it's like the same tectonic shift in internet came, Y2K. Everybody thought about it like, yeah, some small thing is coming, and kind of ignored till it blew up. The same way AI came. Everybody kind of was elusive in the start, and now it's somehow becoming parts of life. The same way there is this wave of thinking mindfully and sustainably. You're skeptical, and there'll be a time when it'll just get integrated in your life. I feel, and we call it within Minzo as this decade of hope. Because while we have done a lot as a human being, we've now at least got conscious and mindful to say, okay, can we take these steps to reverse these actions? And this is the decade of hope where our actions can actually help us get to the place we be.
Before I move to the concluding thoughts, Tanya, is the Indian consumer ready?
I would say the Indian consumer is on the edge. Why? Because you hear both sides of the spectrum a lot. One side you hear is, oh, you have this is so much, like this is so good, so many people are doing it. Why don't you jump into it? But there's a second side which is this whole misnomer. So it's too expensive. It's not for you. You're the only one doing it. And I think what's more important is to see the first one more, because in a basket there can always be one bad apple, but you can't ignore the all other good apples for this. So it's about focus, and it's also about bringing all these live examples to you to say you don't have to just completely transform your life. You have to do small subtle things and focus on the long horizon, the bigger picture, the ROI and the returns stack in there. Don't look at just the immediate cost of investing, but the larger horizon. And that's that perspective when you give to the Indian consumer, it's a great consumer. We are by default people who have sustainability in our genes, our forefathers and think हमारे घर में वो दूध की थैली नहीं आती थी. There used to be that can, like that steel can where people used to go. So we used to have that mud pots to keep water. So all of this is definitely ingrained in our culture. We just need to remember it. We just need to see it, and then it will automatically come back.
Before we conclude this call, do you have any last words?
Well, my last words is that when Mahatma Gandhi actually started that salt march, right, he didn't start by saying, oh, I'm gonna get India to its independence, that's why I'm doing this march. He just started walking. He said, I'm gonna take a small cause to say, let's produce our own salt. What is that small cause for you? What do you want to do? Give me something as simple as saying, yeah, I will take my own water bottle to office tomorrow, or I will one day take a shared cab, or I will do one day of meatlessness. Any small cause. What is that small cause for you? When will you do it? And then how many people can you nudge to do that? Let's just start that wave. Just one small cause and one nudge. And then that's all I'm asking you. Get the person you nudge to ask you to do the same. And then let's see where this wave goes.
While I was listening to you, I was just saying that no wonders your companies do so well. Because I think that it's in your ethos that you're trying to embody in your companies as well. And I think with the insights that you've shared today, no wonders there'll be a lot of people, I'm assuming, who would listen and who would be inspired by what you're doing. At least I am. So
you're very kind, Anu. Thank you so much. I'll be honest, days like this also encourage you to keep going. Because like I said, there's no business which always runs on highs. Every business has its piece of lows and highs. And it's the highs that you have to remember so that you can keep going through the lows.
Thank you so much for your time. And I'm highly grateful for your support.
Thank you. Thank you.